Have you ever had that situation where you find yourself in the middle of the same argument that you've had before with the same person, usually your spouse, of course?
Yep.
So it's a really familiar feeling, isn't it? It's like you're in it and you're doing it, and then it's like, what on earth are we doing here again? We've already talked about this, or we seem to be talking about something different, but it feels exactly the same. But I think the thing is that we mistake our cycles of communication for real communication. I don't think we've got a good handle on what communication really is and how we should be doing it with our partners and even extended people in our lives, family,
relationships,
friends, colleagues.
Definitely. Well, when you consider a relationship being, two people, a shared experience, and if we look at it from the perspective of each person in that dynamic, in that relationship, has a background. We have a past. We have a childhood, right? And during that period of growing up, that sort of thing, we created our version of the way it is here, the way the world is, the way we are, and that sort of thing. So what that did was it allowed us to know how it is. It allowed us to know how we are in the world and what we need to do and form our strategies, our go-to strategies for kind of finding happiness or peace or, avoiding pain or avoiding conflict. But we have these sort of unconscious stories and strategies running, and our own values and our own way of seeing things. And you've got two people and neither one sees it exactly the same as the other.
No. Even if they're twins, they're still going to have a different point of view of what was going on in their world. So, it's very, very rare to have anyone that's very closely aligned in that respect. But and so these are the things that we relied upon when we were young to absolve the tension from our lives, so there's because conflict is inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah, it
like
is.
We just cannot avoid having some level of conflict in our lives, and as kids, that's part of the learning process. We learn through being in conflict with our parents and being told that's not what you do, or that's but how we interpret that becomes quite unique, isn't it?
Yeah. Our childhood interpretations allow us to understand what do I feel this pain here and in this experience, what's it mean, and we'll set things in place, cast them in stone essentially, that I feel this way, that must mean that I'm unworthy and not good enough, or that I'm not allowed to be capable, or whatever it might be. But we kind of, once we've established that, then it's like we're okay, because now I know how it is here. So now I know what I need to do in order to avoid feeling that way again.
Yeah.
And so I have a strategy because I've just placed meaning on that experience. But the thing about it is that as kids, we more often than not misinterpret what we're experiencing, and what we make it mean about us, others, and the world is often quite a misrepresentation
of the reality.
Truth.
Yeah.
But we're like, that's how it is. And so we rock on in life, smoking towards adulthood, and really never questioning our version about how life is, and how we are, and that sort of thing. And we end up, being driven throughout our adult lives by these old childhood stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know that when I was growing up, there was a bit of an age gap between me and my siblings, which, was pretty cool. I almost was only child for a while there, so it was pretty good. And then these two little beings came along, years down the track. But I had to be the grown-up, if you like. Even though I was still quite young, I had this sense of, oh no, I've got to be the grown-up now, so I can't be in conflict. And if ever I did get in conflict with the younger ones, there was always reprimands, like, oh, you're so much bigger than the other two. Grow up. Stop being like, this childish thing. And so, that's what I interpreted as now my role. I've got to be the grown-up. Now, as I looked at the grown-ups, what did the grown-ups do? Well, my grown-ups, I never saw them have a fight. At that age, it just was not a thing. And I'm sure that there was conflict at times, but it was held within, or must have been expressed behind closed doors or whatever. But there was no expression of anger. There was no real angry words spoken. I was most likely the one to get the angry words spoken at because I'd done something wrong, conflict creating learning. But it was pretty rare that would happen. So as me being the grown up, it was like, well, I'm not happy about this situation, but I'm going to suck it up and just let it pass by. And so that's my tendency when there's conflict. I'll just become the quiet little wallpaper in the background and disappear. Wallflower, wallpaper, same. Right?
The pattern is a flower.
Well, yeah. You know that Homer Simpson clip where he just disappears into the hedge? That's sort of like what I wanted to do. I just wanted to whoop, disappear, and then come back later when everyone has finished doing their thing, and we'll just move on from there. And that was sort of my way of being in conflict with things. And and sometimes it served me. Like there's plenty of times I didn't need to say anything, and the thing resolves itself. Either the person runs out of steam and disappears or whatever, or the issue resolves itself and all those sorts of things, but it's not it wasn't me doing it in a functional way. It was just me whoop, zip it, don't say anything, just let it roll through, and hope to heck that on the other side of it there'd be some favorable way of coming back into that dynamic again.
And so looking to essentially avoid the pain of conflict, and then hope that doesn't happen again. But that behavior, that go-to strategy ensures that it keeps happening again.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing was, what it really mucks up is the rest of my communication because, as we've had big teams under our guidance before with different businesses we've had and all that sort of thing. And so unconsciously, I was trying to strategize ways to make sure there was no conflict in the first place so that I didn't have to do the wallflower. So that I didn't have to disappear because I couldn't really, being in that leadership position, you can't really do that very effectively. And I'm sure at times I probably did, but it's not functional. You cannot get what you want by avoiding conflict and trying not to rock boats and all that sort of stuff, because you're a human. You're going to bump into other humans. You're going to have other humans with their own values, their own way of being in the world, their own way of seeing things. You cannot not create conflict from time to time. But it doesn't have to be as painful as we're all making it out to be, as I've since discovered, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, it's interesting you say the word pain. I've heard it said that pain in life, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, which is, I thought that was a really interesting thing to contemplate and it's so true, because life is life and we're human and, we've got our foibles. And we come together with them, and then we're going to experience pain in all of its different ways and shapes and forms. But whether we allow that to be an experience of suffering or not, that really is our choice, and it's how we approach that. And if the way we go about that is driven by our unconscious way of doing things, so our childhood, voids and values and this sort of thing, and the way we used to see things, then we can that ensures that we will suffer because we're in survival mode. We're on autopilot, if you like, as we're going about our life and about our interactions with others, intimate and otherwise. So this is about sort of understanding some things so that we can start to be more conscious about our interactions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our communication and where we're coming from with that communication.
Yeah, because if we're in that reactive mode, we're not communicating effectively. We've gone back into that childish behaviour on some way, shape or form to try and ensure that survival, if you like. Yeah. So what was yours? What did you have?
As a kid, for me, it was like I did see blow-ups from time to time around me, whether it was I was the second of 4 kids and 3 boys, 1 girl. And so whether it was mum and dad having a verbal kind of blow-up at the end of a big day, with a bunch of us screaming little birds doing what we were doing, or whatever, or it was between siblings. There was plenty of rivalry there as well. And so often when that happened, it was noisy and or it was aggressive. It was fighting and punching and I'm sure some biting, maybe not by me.
Oh, of course, no.
But it was like that. So I think the way, like when you looked at it in hindsight, it wasn't cool. It wasn't okay for me to be noisy.
Yep.
It wasn't okay for me to be angry. Well, it was like I could be angry, but don't express it. So, and because my way of expressing it was to lash out, or verbally or physically, and that wasn't okay. So I had to kind of, I had to zip it, but I also ended up with a sense of, right and wrong,
Yeah.
based on good and bad, and I have a very, unconsciously I carry a strong story about there's a right way and a wrong way, and I just so happen to know what the right way is. And
So he thinks. So he thinks.
And so one of my go-to strategies is to try and manipulate the other person into understanding that they've got it wrong and that I know how it is, and to seeing it my way and coming around to you'll have never seen this, but coming around to my way.
Did I laugh then? I didn't mean to.
My way of doing it, and so that manipulation can see me, being kind of overt and noisy, or it can see me being, retreating, but in a passive aggressive sort of a way as well. And but it's designed to
let's just say it involved a lot of instructions.
Yes. Yeah, clarity. I'm seeking to give clarity,
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is, we all have our thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's about knowing what it is so that you can call it out when it shows up. You can see it for what it is rather than believing that this is actually reliable right now. This is reality. This is not just an old story playing out in another way. So that you don't have to be subject to that dynamic. You can actually choose in that moment. How do I want to go about this? How do I want to see this from an adult perspective, if you like, rather than through the lens of a child.
Yeah, because however we're communicating, we can justify that however we want. We're going to be able to go, oh, no, I said that because da, 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 or I didn't say it because, whatever. We always, bringing in justification for how we're speaking and communicating and what we're saying and all that sort of thing. But you could imagine what it's like when you get into your unconscious pattern about telling, there's a right way and giving all those instructions. And then I'm in I just better zip it, be the grown up and let it go. I receive a lot of instructions and I don't listen to any of them.
What?
Because part of it
seems such a waste because it's wisdom.
But because my survival mechanism is just to blank out pretty much until it's finished and then go. So I have actually disappeared into the hedge mentally. So it's, it's almost like, and then of course, it's not that I don't hear any of it, but it's almost like, well, this is all going to be irrelevant in 10 minutes time, because I'm not really taking it in. And for me, it's about, well, I'll just get through this and then I'll move on with whatever is next in my list. And I'll put that tension into something else, whether it's a distraction or getting on with work or whatever. It just is what it is. But it's all just coming from these unconscious patterns that we've put in since we were kids.
Yeah.
So it's a bit funny to talk about it because obviously we're partners. So and we experience this on a regular basis just because we're humans being human, and there's no getting around that, by the way. But it's also fun to observe it, like to be in the observer mode and go, well, that's a little bit funny, isn't it? Like because we could create it in a different way.
And the thing about it is, if we think that it's justified and all the rest of it, and we buy in and we hold out for that, we stand for for our unconscious behavior and whatever, and dysfunctional way of seeing things, if we're standing for that in our lives, we can only really create more limitation, and our relationships really can't go anywhere. They can't go anywhere other than just a kind of a dysfunctional dynamic, that keeps it surface level at best, and then sees us, ending up in that aloof dynamic where we're both, looking to, save our escape and make sure that our energy stays with me and it doesn't get nicked by her, and vice versa, or into the codependent side of things, where I need you to need me, and vice versa. But it can only rattle around in those sorts of dynamics, whereas there's so much more potential for a relationship when we're willing to get real, and to call our own BS out.
You can say bullshit.
Okay. When we're willing to call it out, and to really get real, because then we're okay for those things to blow up from time to time, because we are human. We're not trying to then avoid them, and we know that we can deal with them in a functional way as and when they do. What we've found is that when that's how we're rolling, we see a lot less of it.
Yeah.
And when we do see it, it just doesn't have the sting that it used to have. It's like, oh, that again, and we might have a blowout and it's a flare, but it's done, and we're moving on in a very conscious way. So we communicate what we'd actually really love, and we share what we are going to allow into this space between us. How do I feel? Like, I feel, I love you, and I recognize that was probably not my expression of that, what I've just said or whatever. And so that sort of communication is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can start to put a finger on where the tension came from originally, right? And it's quite often not even the other person that you're talking to where the tension came from. It'll be some other issue outside of the relationship, or even, those other relationships. It'll be something else going on in your life where the tension's sort of been brewing, and because you don't address it in a way that basically nips it in the bud, we end up going to those loops, those patterns, those dramas that we're used to. Because let's face it, in most cases, your intimate partner is the safest person to be in conflict with, because we neither of us want to have a breakdown in that relationship, especially if you're in a codependent relationship, by the way. But we want to make sure that we can blow off some steam and everything's all well and good on the other side of it. But also it's the relationship where there is the most at stake too. So we can also see more of our pattern, because if we get really unstable with it, our dysfunction comes out fourfold, tenfold, even more than in a relationship with, the guy behind the counter at the service station. That's nothing at stake there if they don't like you, or if they say, I never want to see you again. It's like, that's great, I'll buy my fuel somewhere else, something like that, So, so we've got to remember this is an interesting landscape that we find ourselves in when we've got both the options of that dysfunctional, reactive way of being, and then we've also got the landscape of, I'm whole, I'm okay, I'm totally fine and centered, and I know who I am, and I'm clear on where I'm going with my creations and my life. You're part of that, and I know you've got tension right now, but also I see you in your greatness. I see that side of you that I really love about you, even if you're behaving like the 4-year-old version of yourself, or I'm behaving like the 4-year-old version of myself.
Both are.
Well, we both are. And, it's got to be okay, and we've got to be able to let that go once all the steam has been blown. We've got to be able to just go, you know what? I can't hold that as a grudge or a resentment or something and bring it with us and then still have a healthy, happy relationship. It's got to be let in the past, and not ignoring it, putting your head in the sand, but just realizing where it actually came from. And if there's another conversation to be had, then there's another conversation to be had. But you can both take a breath first and get to a centered state, and then come back at it again if need be. Right? So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so often our communication style isn't the problem, or the way we've been taught to communicate, or because a lot of communication techniques are quite manipulative, aren't they? You know,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do end up manipulating the other person, and it can feel really good, by the way. But no one wants to be manipulated. No one wants to be sold. No one wants to be feeling like they're being tricked on some level. But if we start to center ourselves and talk from our truth, it's very refreshing, and it's easy to do once you're in the habit of it. But it is a habit. You know, it's like anything. You got to begin to practice it and commit to it, because it does lead to higher levels of connection on all relationships that you have available to you. Is
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to put on pretenses or follow certain rules or any of that sort of thing. Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Very good. So we're going to continue this conversation in our Skool group. The link will be below in the description. If you're keen to come and find out some more, come and join us in there.
Beautiful.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.